Hey guys, welcome back to Games of War. It's been far too long yet again, and I find myself saying this over and over way too often on this channel. It's been months have passed. I hope you guys all had a fantastic Christmas, New Year, everything in between. The channel is reborn now, moving forward. I've got renewed passion, renewed energy, and it's time to move forward. Starting with today's episode, focusing on a genre of gaming that I've been playing and enjoying an awful lot lately. It's a genre that on its best day can be described by fans as audio-visual experiences, by detractors, glorified walking simulators. So in case you haven't guessed, or maybe you haven't played any of these games, I'm talking about the genre that the games like Flow, Flower, and Journey helped create. There's something about a beautifully orchestrated soundtrack with some striking art design and art direction that really captivates my soul as a gamer, to the point where I don't mind a much more laid-back and easygoing, relaxing gaming experience. Many of these games avoid common tropes like death, life bars, hit points in video games, and just focus on a much more cinematic approach, and that's okay with me. However, the first batch of games we're going to start with aren't necessarily of this genre. They're some of my favorites of all time, and I believe they're responsible for opening the doors for a genre like this to exist, with many of the developers that worked on these games citing these as original sources of inspiration in terms of art direction, overall artistic vision, emotion, and music. And that first batch of games I'm referring to is none other than the amazing Team Ico games, Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian. Hope you guys enjoy the episode. As always, thank you for watching. Our tale begins way back in the early days of the PS2, I think 2001, early 2002. I picked up Ico, and it wasn't like I really sought the game out. It was kind of a blind buy, and I almost didn't pick it up due to the hideous North American box art, but something compelled me to pick it up, and I sure am glad that I did. Now, this is the Ico and Shadow of the Colossus collection. It bundles both of Team Ico's PlayStation 2 games, Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, in one convenient package. It's got updated textures, a fresh coat of HD paint, that both of these games are in 3D, and what an underutilized, underappreciated effect this is. If you've got a proper TV and glasses, both games look absolutely stunning in 3D, and I cannot recommend this package deal enough. Now with the Ico, I was expecting a fairly standard action-adventure game. It looked pretty atmospheric from the few screenshots that I had seen of it, but I wasn't expecting much, and I knew that the story had been done many times before, kind of a boy meets girl, saves princess type thing going on. But what I wasn't prepared for was how much of an emotional attachment and how much I became invested in these two characters as their relationship grew throughout the game. It really is stunning stuff. It's a game that comes along like once in a generation, and it really leaves a long-lasting impression on you, the player. Starting with the game's opening, Ico, the boy that's been born with horns, is being taken away from his village, banished, exiled. He's taken to this gloomy, dark, dreary castle to be later sacrificed for being born with horns. Now, two things that trigger me in real life is animal cruelty and cruelty to children. These evil bastards take the small child away from his village. They take him to a lonely, dark castle. They lock him up in some tomb vault style crypt where he is chained by his hands and just leave him there until he's to be sacrificed. Luckily for Ico, there's a small disturbance in the atmosphere, almost like an earthquake, and it knocks this tomb over, and Ico is free, and it's there you begin exploring the castle. And right away, I absolutely fell in love with the distinctive visual style. It has a really nice earthy tone to it with some amazing lighting effects going on. Controls feel very right. The camera is nicely centered. You're able to swivel it around to get a better view of the environment. You're going to be doing some light platforming, some puzzle solving, some environmental puzzles, and the whole visual style and presentation has a really unique look to it. It's almost like a light grain that covers the entire image, and it really helps go a long way to create that atmosphere of this kind of isolated castle. This kid's all alone. He has no idea what's going on, but he just wants to escape. And early on, you meet a girl that's trapped in like a bird cage. You end up freeing her, and you later find out that her name is Yorda, and this is where the game really takes a hold of you in terms of that emotional attachment. I've played a lot of games where you do like babysitting, hand-holding, and you've got to kind of look after the other player. A lot of times it can become quite annoying really quickly. Bad AI and just dumb decision making. You're constantly having to backtrack and keep after her. And this game manages to avoid those pitfalls and actually make this the strong point of the game. Just grasping her hand and the animation as they run together and kind of pulls her along, and all the different puzzle solving, getting her across gaps and pulling her up ledges. It's all animated so beautifully, and it just kind of tugs at your heartstrings the more you play into it and the more you keep her safe and help her along. It's a very strong mechanic, and the bond you witness being formed is so powerful throughout the game. The visual style complements it all beautifully. The story unfolds with very minimal cutscenes and very minimal storytelling, but it's so powerful and effective the way things shape up. I'm not going to spoil anything because it's definitely a tale you must play from start to finish. There isn't much enemy variety to speak of in Eco. However, there are shadow creatures, and they will constantly hound Yorda, trying to sneak up and grab her, take her back to the Shadow Realm. They'll grab her and start flying away. This is where you, with Eco and his trusty stick, must approach these creatures and kind of beat them back down into the ground from whence they came. She's constantly going to be attacked, so you're always going to be on your toes, ready for these shadow creatures to come and try to lift her off. It definitely keeps things exciting because you never know when these things are going to come out. And when they do come out, they are relentless in trying to get her back down to that Shadow Realm, so you got to always look out for them. Don't expect like long, drawn-out combos or an elaborate combat system. Combat is definitely an afterthought. It's just meant to get rid of these creatures and continue your pursuit of platforming and puzzle solving. It's serviceable and it works well. All in all, everything comes together beautifully in this game. It is definitely a majestic adventure, and it definitely changed the way I thought about action adventure games. It's such a cinematic tale. The music was beautiful and very powerful at just the right points. Nothing was overdone. It tells a tale that's been told before, but does so in such a way that it feels fresh and new. It's definitely one of the best games in the PlayStation, and it opened my eyes to an entirely new artistic vision, artistic genre of games, thought-provoking games with emotion, emotional investment, connection. Music is powerful when it needs to be, subtle at other times. It really rouses something inside you, and Eco is just a really deep experience. I can't recommend it enough. Definitely check it out. As much as I enjoyed Eco, it wasn't until a few years after the fact, when Shadow of the Colossus finally hit, that I became a full-fledged super fan of Team Eco for life. Shadow of the Colossus is one of the few modern masterpieces in gaming. It's up there with my personal favorite games of all time. Released to critical acclaim across the board, this game is just completely on another level. And unlike Eco, which was basically a blind buy for me, Shadow of the Colossus had my full attention from the initial announcement. I was reading up everything I could, hyping myself up for it. And if I'm being honest, I was a little concerned the more I read. It was just a series of boss battles, one after another. Nothing really in between, no other enemies, no combat system in between bosses. I thought this might be a mistake. I thought it might be shallow, repetitive. I couldn't have been more wrong. For those that complain that they're missing the heart and soul of what makes this game so unique and so compelling, and it's that journey to get there. It's that sense of discovery. And the moment the game begins with that opening cinema, you're introduced to the Wanderer riding on the back of Argo, your faithful steed. Just that opening orchestral soundtrack starts stirring up something deep within my soul immediately, man. This game just spoke to me. The beautiful visuals that you could tell was in the same world as Eco just by looking at it. It has that same desolate, long forgotten land, lonely look. Very unique and very distinctive. One of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in my life. As the game begins, you are in the Shrine of Worship and you've made your way to this forgotten land. And there you're greeted by a kind of demon with a really creepy voice. His name is Duraman. He explains to the Wanderer that he is able to reverse fate. The Wanderer accepts, and you are off to slay these 16 Colossus and bring back your loved one. And from there you set off. Now, riding horseback on Agro is a wonderful experience. Very fluid animation. Everything looks beautiful in motion. And as the Wanderer, you have two weapons. You've got a bow and arrow, and you've got your sword. And now as you begin, you hold the sword up into the light, and the sun beats down and it reflects off the blade, and it kind of points you in the right direction that you have to go. And oftentimes the path is not just a clear-cut path. You've got to really navigate around these environments. It might lead you to a set of mountains where you have to hop off the horse and then begin climbing, jumping over ledges, platforming. Getting there is half the fun. And just when you think that you're not going the right way, you've made a wrong turn, that beautiful orchestral soundtrack slowly starts haunting in, and you realize that you've made it, and you hear those thundering footsteps of these Colossus in the distance, and you see them, and they're absolutely screen filling. For the time on the PlayStation 2, it was a visual tour de force. It looks even better on the PlayStation 3 in HD. The Colossus are massive. Now, once you've gotten your way to the Colossus, that's just half of the battle. You've got to approach it, grab onto its fur, start climbing it, grab onto the rocks, platform up the actual Colossus until you find its weak point and begin stabbing it. Other boss battles have you arriving to a giant lake where this giant Colossus serpent is underwater and it pulls you down under. Other Colossus are giant winged beasts in the air. When they swoop down at you, you kind of jump up and grab onto the wings, and you find yourself flying through the sky at top speeds. You can feel the wind flying by, and you hold onto this bird for dear life, looking for the weak points and start stabbing. Each Colossus has such a different feel. They're all so uniquely designed. To be honest, I don't think there's a stinker between the 16 of them. They're all super inventive. They're all a lot of fun to fight, puzzle solving your way onto their bodies and kind of figuring out the best approach. And obviously this Colossus don't want you on them. So if you're climbing up his arm and you're kind of making your way, he's going to take his arm and swing it around trying to get you off him. If you're climbing up his back, he's going to throw himself back and attempt to throw you off of his back. Staying on this thing is half the challenge, and the game kind of operates on a stamina bar. The second you grab on or start climbing, you see your stamina start to decrease, so you've got to be really mindful of how much stamina you have left before you attempt to make the climb up any higher. It's a lot of fun. It's a great system. The sword play works great. The bow and arrow is a great touch. Riding horseback and doing combat is exceptionally fun in some of the boss battles. And even though these huge hulking beasts want nothing more than to kill you, you can't help but feel sorry after you've stabbed it to death repeatedly, and watching it kind of slowly fall and crumble to the ground and become one with the earth again. It's kind of like a sad moment watching these things die. You almost feel bad for them. But I can't stress how much of an exhilarating feeling it is taking these bosses down. I can't overstate how much fun it is making your way through the land, through the different valleys and caves and waterfalls and mountain ranges. Finding the way to each Colossus is half the fun. I never got tired of searching the land for the next beast. When that music hit, I knew I was in for one hell of a boss fight. It doesn't matter if that's all it is. The game is a masterpiece through and through. You don't even think about it in terms of, oh man, there's nothing else to do in this. Because each boss fight is so memorable, you really feel spent after each victory, returning to the Shrine of Worship to get your next orders. As much as I love Shadow of the Colossus, the original PS2 release had some issues when it came to the graphics and the frame rate. It definitely took a hit a lot of the times in some of the boss battles. It pushed the system to its limits back then, and there definitely were some problems. But if you want the definitive way to play the game, definitely check out the PlayStation 4 version done by Blue Point Games. These guys took this to the next level and then some. It looks like it was built from the ground up. It looks like a brand new game in terms of visuals. They did such an amazing job. The Colossus are rendered in that 4K beautiful detail. They are incredible to see in this kind of detail. The vast landscapes look amazing. There's different options you can choose from if you want frame rate or resolution. There's also a ton of different filters you can apply to find the look that suits you best. It's a visually stunning game. One of the best looking games I've ever seen in my life, to this day still. And finally, this brings us to The Last Guardian, and this is a very interesting game. It very much fits in the same universe as the first two. This was a game that was very troubled from the start. I didn't think this was going to come out. I was so shocked when it finally got revealed to be coming out for sure for the PlayStation 4 back at that E3, because this was stuck in development hell for a long time. Supposed to come out on the PS3, and then we got the announcement that Team Ico and the creator had left Sony, and we weren't sure if they were going to work on it or not, if they were going to hand it off to a different studio. Then it was confirmed that they, yes, still were working on the game, and we kind of breathed a sigh of relief, and then years went by with nothing. And then finally the big reveal. I was so shocked when it was finally coming out. It shifted platforms to the PlayStation 4, and I'm sure they had a lot of trouble going from the PS3, which is already difficult to program for, and switch it over to the PS4. But whatever happened, they did it. The game finally came out, and for me, it really didn't disappoint. The central theme of the game was definitely being described as kind of like a boy and the bond he shares with an animal. And I thought Trico was a really fascinating looking character by design, almost like a giant bird, cat, dragon-ish kind of character. I was really excited to see him in motion and see the individual feathers animate individually, and I just thought it looked amazing. Now the game does have some issues, and I wouldn't call them issues per se. I would definitely call it a design choice. A lot of the game is puzzle solving and relying on an animal AI to guide you along the game. And animals, just like in real life, they don't listen all the time. And that's a problem you're going to have with Trico. You're going to call him, you're going to want him to do stuff, expect him to do stuff, and he might not want to do it. And it's going to take him a minute to do it. You've got to make sure he's happy, make sure he's fed, make sure you pet him. And it's just kind of relying on another character controlled by an AI to complete tasks in the game. There's a lot of puzzle solving that requires you to hop on his back, to use him to jump on higher ledges. You also rely on his lightning powers for destroying parts of the environment and attacking. It's a really cool concept, and it definitely does work. You just have to have some patience because the animal's not always going to listen when you want him to. The visuals are stunning. The world looks very, very similar to Shadow of the Colossus and Ico in terms of its overall artistic vision. You can definitely see that it's in the shared world of the first two games. It's got that beautiful architecture. Everything's designed really nicely, and the puzzles are really fun and inventive, and there's some great creative uses of the animal. It definitely harkens back to Ico from a gameplay standpoint. That bond you formed with Yorda in the first game is very much alive in this one with Trico. As you feed him, take care of him, pet him, keep him happy, you watch that bond form throughout the game, and he is more apt to do things that you need him to do. I really enjoyed that aspect of this game. I thought it was very well done. It's a really exciting feeling jumping on his back, kind of scurrying up to the top of him, holding on for dear life as he jumps and makes these huge platforming sections through the environments, jumps that you never thought he'd be able to make. He's a very agile creature, and therefore it's a lot of fun to watch the stuff that he can accomplish. And then finally landing and getting down and furthering the game. It really is nice watching this bond grow between the two. Trico's a great character. A few slow parts and some definite trial and error gameplay, kind of trying different things over and over till you figure out the right way to proceed, can definitely bring it down a bit, but overall it's unlike anything I've ever played before. It's very ambitious, very unique. The Last Guardian sits up there with the first two games as a masterpiece in game design, and I can't wait for their fourth game they've been teasing recently. Definitely pick up The Last Guardian. Next up, we've got a batch of games that can best be described as experiences, and these are kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum from games like Eco, Shadow of the Colossus. They're definitely smaller in scale, and I don't mean that as a knock on any of the games, nor does it mean you're going to enjoy them any less. But I think this is where the divide happens in this genre. This is where you either get these kind of games or you don't. It's as simple as that. And I think one of the main reasons for this is that it's not really a game in the sense that you can fail. There is some puzzle solving, there's some platforming. These are definitely the kind of games you can pop in and just sit back and relax, take in the visual splendor, listen to the beautiful music, and just experience them without the fear of dying or failing over and over again. Most of them can be finished in one sitting, and they really do make an impact, and they stay with you long after the credits have rolled. That Game Company is a small development team that signed a deal with Sony back in the mid-2000s. It was a 3-game deal, and the first one they brought out was Flow. And I played that one first, and I right away liked the music. I thought it was really mood setting, really ambient, and I really didn't know what I was doing right away. You start off playing as this small, multi-segmented, almost worm, snake-like creature. You're definitely underwater, and I was just swimming around, and I wasn't really sure what to make of it at first. It wasn't until I approached some of the other organisms that I found out that I was actually eating them, and once you consume them, your creature starts to grow, and you venture deeper down into the ocean. The levels are top down, and you can definitely see like another plane underneath, and it's kind of fuzzy, kind of washed out. And you go from plane to plane, devouring larger organisms until you get bigger and bigger, and just keep going from there. It's nothing you can really fail at. There's no way you can die. You can get eaten by other organisms that are bigger than you. You just kind of lose your parts and get smaller again and go back to levels. It's got a nice clean look to it, and overall the music really fits the mood of the game. It's just something to sit back and enjoy and kind of take in the ambiance, and it definitely creates a mood, and it's enjoyable to play. Now their next game was a big step up. When I played Flower, I was completely blown away by the sheer beauty. It was a majestic game. The soundtrack was expertly composed, such beautiful piano compositions that accompanied the on-screen action. Now you start off, you're in this apartment complex, and you're looking out the window, and this city's very like dull and drab, and on the windowsill you see a flower pot. And each of these flower pots represents a different level in the game world. And you start off as a single flower petal, and you kind of control the wind, and you guide this petal around, and you see other lines and forms of other flowers. Now every time your petal goes over a row of flowers and causes them to bloom, they kind of join your petal, and before you know it, you've got a long stream of petals, and there's different sound cues that go off as the flowers bloom around you. And after you uncover the entire area and have caused them to bloom, it kind of brings life back to the area. It's a really beautiful experience, a very soothing experience. I couldn't get enough of Flower. I still go back to it to this day and just go from level to level and enjoy the beautiful set pieces. I don't know if I've ever seen a game that fits so well with its orchestral soundtrack. It swells, it rises, and each time you complete a level, you go back to the apartment and go back on the windowsill and choose the next flower pot. You see more and more life being restored as you finish each level. It's just a really cool progression. It's definitely unique. It's one of a kind game. It's the most soothing, tranquil experience that I've seen yet in a video game. Flower is a masterpiece done right. It's very short, but you're going to come away with it with a smile on your face, and it will definitely give you the feels in a very good way. So Journey was the final game to be released of the 3-game deal, and it was definitely the best of the bunch. Released in 2012, even if you're not really a fan of this style of game, you're not into this, Journey might be the one game that you really do enjoy. It was a stunning visual achievement. The music was some of the best I've ever heard. I think it won a couple of Grammys if I'm not mistaken. The game sees you taking control of a mysterious robed figure. In the beginning, he's kneeling down in the vast desert, and you see a mountain in the looming distance, and that is your eventual goal. The levels themselves are divided up into sections, making it kind of feel like an open world. There's definitely a fair bit of exploration to be had. However, you're always constantly moving on a linear path. The robed character also has a scarf around his neck and allows you to take flight. The amount of time that you can stay in air is dictated by these magical runes that run down the length of the scarf. The longer you stay in the air, it drains the scarf's magical charge. Now this can be refilled by finding floating pieces of like red fabric. There's also glowing glowing symbols scattered throughout the environments. When you find these glowing symbols, you're able to extend the length of the scarf, therefore giving you more time in the air. The sense of exploration is really rewarding, and it gets even more so as you make your way closer to the mountain. You come across these ruins of ancient civilizations that once thrived in this desert. As you approach these ruins, you can see artwork and murals painted on the walls that depicts a civilization that has long died out, and that's how the story is presented in this game. It's not through spoken dialogue or any cutscenes with words. It's done through emotion and viewing these scenes painted out on the walls, which really works well in the game's favor. It leaves a lot open to interpretation and come to your own conclusions on what exactly happened to the civilization. The multiplayer in Journey establishes a real strong sense of companionship. Although you're playing alongside a nameless player, you are able to communicate through musical chimes, which really evokes a strong sense of companionship as you take this journey on what feels like such a desolate world. Having that someone there, being able to communicate via musical chimes and being able to kind of recharge each other's scarf energy by being near each other really helps puzzle solve your way through these beautiful environments. And that's one thing I can't understate enough, is just how gorgeous Journey looks in motion. Those vast open desert environments, and watching that sunlight cascade down and kind of illuminate off the sand, it creates a golden shimmer that permeates the whole visual look of the game. It's something stunning in motion. Watching the robed character kind of slide his way through the sand environments, it makes such a strong visual impact you won't soon forget it after playing, accompanied by one of the most beautiful soundtracks I've ever heard in my life, very much deserving of those Grammy wins. It all comes together to form such a creative and unique package. And like I said before, if you haven't played any games of this nature, Journey might just be the one that might change your opinion. Give it a try. It's a one-of-a-kind game that just beckons to be played over and over again. The replay value is through the roof. There's always something new to discover. Now, when these games first came out, they were released digitally on the PlayStation Store. They've been since ported to the more powerful PlayStation systems. I do believe this is the only way to own them physically on a disc. It has all 3 games in the collection. It also comes bundled with the game's soundtracks and some themes, which is worth it. Price of admission alone, in my opinion. Amazing soundtracks. Great innovative gameplay. This package is one not to be missed. Overall, Journey is a masterpiece through and through, and my expectations for their next game were sky high. And oddly enough, that's exactly what I got. That game company's next project was called Sky. Unfortunately, it wasn't exactly what I expected. Now, it came out for iOS and Android, and it was an open world social adventure game. I wasn't even able to play the game properly until last summer when it was finally ported over to the Switch. Now, this is a free-to-play game, and it's a real double-edged sword for me, because I absolutely love the stunning environments and the beautiful music, everything I expect from that game company. However, I'm not much into the free-to-play social interacting aspect of the game. If this would have been a strong single-player focused game that took place in these lost cities up in the sky and just had an epic sprawling single-player mission structure and overall adventure, I would have been in 100%. It would have been like Journey in the Sky for me, a dream come true. However, this has just got that focus on interaction with other people, meeting people, befriending them, forming bonds, exchanging gifts, learning new expressions and gestures. The currency is handled with like in-game candles, and you can also pay to have some in-game items. It's a cool concept, and I really dig how they are continuing support for the game in terms of different seasons and different festivals that open up at different times of the year. It's a cool concept. Definitely has beautiful visuals. The vistas are amazing. The controls are very well done. It looks absolutely incredible on the Switch. There's even options for 30 frames and 60 frames. So they definitely did their job. It's just not my kind of game, which is really sad. And it's interesting that the next epic game in this genre came from a completely different studio. That game company had some internal issues after Journey was released, causing several of its key members to depart and form their own studio called Giant Squid, and their first release was a banger. Calling the game Abzu, this game was an epic in every sense of the word, and this completely solidified this genre as one of my favorites in gaming. This takes everything that was majestic and beautiful about Journey and transcends it into the ocean and water setting, which if you've watched any of my past videos, you know I'm a complete mark for anything that takes place in the water, underwater, in the ocean. As you take control, the diver wakes up, and you'll notice right away that the swimming controls are buttery smooth. I got the feeling right away that the diver was not human, just judging by the speed at which it's able to swim. Way too fast, way too fluid for it to be a human in water. After swimming around for a bit in the opening scene, the game almost gives off an open world-ish kind of feel. That's quickly dashed the moment you enter the next area and you notice that the levels are all kind of connected and they progress in a linear fashion. The game has a really nice progression as you advance through the ocean. You'll be swimming in wide open areas, natural caverns, ancient ruins, and very much like Journey, the story never comes outright and explains itself. You piece together events by underwater paintings, murals on rocks and such. It seems there was a civilization that long died out that had a really strong connection with the ocean. Once these pyramid-like structures started appearing underwater, it kind of started sapping the ocean's life force. Now you playing as a diver can interact with underwater sonar objects, solve minor puzzles, you can interact with some of the sea life, and they will also help you in your quest to restore the ocean and get rid of these pyramids and restore balance and harmony to the ocean. Now taking one look at the game, you can see that Abzu is a breathtakingly gorgeous game. The art direction in this is stunning. Some of the environments are so captivating that, very much like Journey as well, I often found myself just swimming around aimlessly and enjoying the beautiful scenery, watching the plant life swirl around me with the underwater currents, watching the fish swim by in large groups. The underwater life never ceases to amaze. It's been rendered with such great detail and such a soft, beautiful color palette. You can't help but fall in love with the visuals. And once again, the soundtrack is of epic proportions. It fits so well with the on-screen imagery and overall vibe to the game. It's overall a true joy to play. Abzu was a great step up from Journey. It contains that same magic and wonder that made Flower and Journey so great. And I was a little concerned initially when I heard that some of the key members had left that game company and formed a new one. Giant Squid is in total control. They have handled this title with the utmost care and grace. This is a beautiful addition to the genre. The story also spins a really nice mystery. There's a nice twist in there. There's some sections that take place out of the water as well, so there's a lot to look forward to. As always, I won't spoil anything. A lot of it is left open to interpretation once again. Seeing this game through to its conclusion brought a smile to my face. I enjoyed every second with Abzu. It's one of the best looking and best sounding games I've ever played in my life, and it is such a strong continuation and what this beautiful genre has to offer. Definitely check out Abzu. Giant Squid's next game was a launch title for the PS5, and it was my most anticipated game on the platform at launch. The Pathless came out. It did not disappoint. An open world action adventure game that drops you off in the thick of things right off the bat with absolutely no explanation as to what's going on, no map. Now, it started off being a little overwhelming and a little unsure of what to do. That feeling quickly fades as you take control of the Huntress. She's arrived at this island that's kind of at the ends of the earth, and it has been cursed. The God Slayer has corrupted this land and the inhabitants, and it's up to you to set things right. I immediately enjoyed taking control of the Huntress right from the beginning of the game. There's a strong focus on momentum in this game. The way she's able to move through the island is nothing short of stunning. She's a master archer, and she uses this skill in every aspect of her movement. She's able to slide and snap lock onto these talismans that are floating in the air. When you shoot these things, it kind of fills her boost gauge and she's able to dash. It's a really interesting mechanic that can be chained together. You're able to cover large distances very quickly using this mechanic to its fullest effect. It's a really intuitive system that works very well. Early on, you also come into possession of a mask that grants you the abilities of the Spirit Vision, and this kind of takes the place of having a map. Activating the Spirit Vision allows you to see critical locations and collectibles throughout the game, and there's a ton of stuff to do aside from the main quest. You'll have a blast just exploring this island in its entirety, collecting all of the essential items that are really going to give you the max enjoyment of the game. Early on, you come into contact with a Spirit Mother, and she fills you in on some of the game's backstory regarding the God Slayer and the corruption that he has spread over this island. Unfortunately, it's affected her and her offspring as well. Now, these offspring serve as the corrupted spirits that are going to be the boss battles that take place on the different plateaus in this game. Now, these plateaus serve as like the game's levels. There's 5 in total to conquer, with each having a corrupted spirit to do battle in. Each plateau has 3 towers that need to be purified before you can progress any further. You do that by gathering tokens spread throughout the land, and these tokens are hidden behind different objectives, puzzles, environmental puzzles, and these are all handled brilliantly throughout the game. After meeting the Earth Mother, she reincarnates herself into a living pet companion eagle that becomes your constant companion throughout the game. As soon as you set off with this eagle companion, it really adds a whole new dynamic to the game and makes it that much more enjoyable. The eagle is used for everything from platforming, being able to float and cross large gaps. She's able to flap her wings and give you flight, although at first very limited, but using that Spirit Vision and locating some of these collectibles, you're gonna have your hands full collecting everything that you possibly can, which will in turn power up your eagle, give her new abilities, and help you out through the game. The eagle's able to fly out, grab onto objects, carry them, set them down on switches to open up doors. You form a very strong bond with the eagle as the game goes on, and it's handled brilliantly. Flying up, landing on your shoulder, you're able to wipe the corruption off the eagle's wings, comfort and pet the eagle, and watching it kind of get closer and kind of cuddle up to you. It's a really heartwarming feeling, and it really does highlight the bond that you share throughout the game. After cleansing the 3 towers in each plateau, it causes the spirit to manifest itself in physical form, and it leads to the game's highly impressive boss battles. These are the highlight of the game for me personally. They're multi-tiered epic battles that span multiple stages and environments. Once they show up, you absolutely tear them up with arrows, and that's where the game's momentum mechanic really comes into play. Being able to slide, shoot, dash in a continuous motion is really satisfying. You factoring in your eagle companion and platforming becomes an absolute masterclass of sliding, dashing, jumping, floating down, flying up higher. It's a really fluid system, and once mastered, the game really becomes something special. I can't stress enough how epic these boss battles are. Each one gets better than the next. After you vanquish these spirits, the plateau gets purified, a wind tunnel appears, and it kind of funnels you to the next plateau. Now each new plateau you travel to has you ascending higher and higher up the mountain, and the visual changes that accompany are highly impressive as well. The art direction in this game is absolutely stunning. As one would expect from games of this genre, you're going to be exploring dense forests, wide open plains with beautiful rolling fields and meadows. You eventually make your way to a wintry city nestled deep in the mountains, long been abandoned. Signs of previous life are evident everywhere, and that's a special aspect about this game, is taking in the game's little touches that you see scattered throughout the environments. It's all handled with grace and style, and that's really the aspect of the pathless I enjoyed the most. I've heard some reviewers say, oh, the game is nothing more than go to the next area, clear the 3 towers, rinse, repeat, fight the boss, on to the next, it can get repetitive. But for me, the beauty of the game is in the different variety of the plateaus and levels. They're all so beautifully designed. There's a logical progression from each to the next. The visual diversity is nothing short of stunning. It looks absolutely gorgeous in the PlayStation 5, accompanied by one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard once again. Take in this gorgeous setting and excellent level variety, add in a really charming and likable eagle companion that's helpful throughout in puzzle solving as well as movement, an orchestral soundtrack to rival all others, and you've got a masterclass in game design once again from Giant Squid. From Abzu to the Pathless, I don't know how they're going to top this one. Definite must own, a real bright spot in the early times of the PlayStation 5. Amazing game. Air Memories of Old, what a surprise this was. Once again, went into this not knowing a whole lot about it, took a chance on it, and was glad I did. In this game, you play as a character named Auk, who is the last of the shapeshifters. The story in this sees you taking a sacred pilgrimage to the land of the gods. Early on, you discover the power of Carla's light, and you must visit 3 temples to stop evil from overtaking this world. And this is another game that you kind of piece together the story as you go, through events and flashbacks and interacting with other characters. Early on, when you come into possession of this lantern, it's used throughout to kind of highlight the story to you and explain it to you as you play. Holding the lantern up to certain glyphs will trigger flashbacks and show you events of what happened in the past. You'll come across figures frozen in time. By holding the lantern up to them, you can also see the events of their past lives and how they came to be resting in the area they are. The point where this game won me over was when I exited the first temple, began exploring, came to the edge of the environment, and I was able to look out into the vast sky and see that this world actually takes place up high in the clouds, high up in the sky, and you see almost like a vast island network of land scattered throughout the skies. Without much thinking, I leapt out into the vast sky, and that's where I was able to shapeshift into a giant flying bird. And I have to say, the sensation of flight in this game is handled beautifully. One of the first things I did was kind of swoop down and fly through the clouds, and this is done with an amazing graphical effect. Kind of entering a tunnel, you see the clouds funnel around you. Amazing light sourcing lights up the sky, and the beautiful orchestral soundtrack kicks into high gear. This was amazing stuff, man. Seeing this game in motion and flight almost make the on-foot sections seem a bit drab. It's really unparalleled in its sense of freedom. You're able to visit any island at will, piecing together the story on the fly as you explore the different islands throughout the sky. When it does come time to get back to the on-foot sections, which is done in any order you want, the temples are all pretty well designed. Everything is well thought out. The puzzles you solve while in these caverns are pretty intuitive and for the most part pretty enjoyable. But in the back of my mind, as I was playing this game, I was constantly wanting to get the hell out of these temples and just take flight again. Is that enjoyable? I could spend hours just flying around this game's world, landing at different islands at will, soaring through the clouds. It might be some of the most enjoyable flight I've ever experienced in any video game, making this package well worth the price of admission. You can get this game for dirt cheap. I came into this game with no preconceived notions, and I didn't expect much, but I was really blown away by how much I enjoyed the package overall. If you're looking for a really nice action adventure game with an amazing sense of flight, definitely pick up Air Memories of Old. Moving on to the Nintendo Switch, we've got Far Lone Sails, and this was a really nice surprise for me personally. Didn't know much about it at all when I bought it. It was a pleasant surprise. This is the kind of game that I popped in and didn't stop playing until it was finished. The game features a real depressing and almost somber tone to it. Starting off, you play as a small, mysterious little character, and you're in this vast land. It's very dark and gray, and you're not sure what to make of it at first. You begin exploring this abandoned house, and you see posters on the wall, and that's where the story kind of comes into focus as you make your way throughout the game. There's going to be things taped up on walls and different abandoned buildings, and you kind of take in information based on what you see. Early on, you come into this structure that houses this really crazy looking vehicle. I wasn't even sure if it was functionable from a design standpoint. It just has a weird look to it, very steampunk inspired. This game is all about kind of resource management and on the fly thinking to make this thing work, power it up, and progress through the environments. And that's where the magic and addictive gameplay comes in. The game switches views when you enter the vehicle, which is called an locomotive, you learn later on in the game. Camera pans in real close, and you've got different stations inside of this thing. After some initial experimentation, you've got a conveyor belt that takes you up to the different floors inside of the vehicle. On my way to finding this vehicle, I noticed that there were some things I could pick up in the environment and carry. Thankfully, I did carry those all the way to the vehicle, because anything you find in the environments can be used inside of this thing. You take it over to the little station where it's able to break down pretty much anything and convert it into fuel to power this thing. Lanterns seem to work, mailboxes, small crates. You can take all these things aboard. There's small little storage hooks inside of the vehicle to hang them up for later use. You take the elevator up to the middle section of the vehicle. You notice a platform that you're able to set things down. Pressing a button, see the tank fill up as the items are converted into the energy. And from there, you make your way over to the speedometer section. You push in the big red button, which powers up the vehicle, and you hear this thing begin to rattle and shake. I almost wondered if it was going to fall apart, but then it starts picking up steam and moving across the environment. As this locomotive charges forward, there's some steam buildup, and you see a meter start to fill up, and it'll start flashing red. It's up to you to push the steam release button when the meter fills up, letting out a powerful gust of steam that pushes the locomotive into full gear, and you're able to reach top speed. And all these things have to be constantly monitored on the fly as you're progressing through the environments. When the locomotive gets moving, you're able to pan the camera back, and that's where the game's beauty and scenery comes into play. The environment is absolutely stunning. The backdrop is constantly changing as you make your way across, and I pieced together on my own just by observing the scenery. This must have been all at the bottom of an ocean that must have long dried up, because there's all kinds of shipwrecks littered throughout the environments, which really adds some intrigue and gives the world some personality. The fuel drains pretty quickly, and it's up to you to keep adding new energy sources, keep that tank full, keep releasing that steam, and keep this thing moving forward. Panning that camera back, cruising along in your locomotive, taking in that beautiful scenery. Eventually you're going to come to different roadblocks in the environments, and this may be structures, this may be small gates, and this is where it's up to you to stop the vehicle via a button you can push. It has like a little anchor that comes out, and then you jump out of the locomotive and you're able to explore the environments, and this is where the puzzle solving aspect comes into the gameplay. There's a real nice variety when you exit the vehicle of different puzzle solving aspects to the gameplay. There's different structures that you're going to explore. You kind of have to puzzle solve your way through them to open up the gate to be able to progress. Now, in addition to having to exit the vehicle to puzzle solve your way into different structures in the environment to allow the path to be opened up to continue on, you'll eventually reach some upgrade stations, and these are all really creative and really cool to see take place. After a few light puzzle solving mechanics, you see this giant sail being lowered down and fitted onto your locomotive. It bolts on, seals itself up, and your vehicle begins rolling out. Armed with your brand new sail attachment, custom installed, you're able to continue making your way through the environments. It's a really helpful mechanic. All the upgrades make a lot of sense. When you're on top of the locomotive, anytime you hear wind blowing through the environments, that's when you know you can raise the sail and let the wind do the lion's share of the work, giving you a much needed break from constantly pumping in fuel sources and keeping this thing refueled and keeping the steam release. It frees things up so you can just kind of sit back, pan that camera back, and just watch this vehicle sputter across these environments and take in that beautiful scenery. And that's where the intrigue sets in with the storyline. You really start wondering what exactly happened to cause these oceans to dry up. What's going on with all this weird machinery and all these different abandoned buildings you're exploring? Another really interesting mechanic to this game is the damage control and repair aspects. Now, there's also different stations inside of this thing. Sometimes when you're making your way through the environment, you'll smash into a wall, which will cause a fire to break out. You got to take your elevator up to the top floor. You've got a little fire hose located on top. You push the button, turn on the hose, take the elevator back down, take the fire hose, and put out the fire quickly to avoid damage on the inside of your vehicle. Other times you can have electrical failures. If you fail to release the steam in a proper time, then you know it's your cue to take the elevator up, grab your little repair tool gun, go over and start repairing the damage. It's all really intuitive stuff. It's a lot of fun, and that's what gave this game a lot of its charm for me personally, was being able to handle any situation that comes at you with all of the built-in stuff inside of this vehicle. You never have an overabundance of anything, so you're really kind of in scavenger mode, always on the lookout for items that can be brought in to use as fuel sources. You will encounter some highly hazardous and very dangerous extreme weather. Now, when this happens, you need to take cover immediately, find a structure to keep this locomotive safe. That's another really cool aspect that tied into the overall mystery of the story, like what exactly happened to cause this inclement weather and why it's so dangerous. It's a highly unique game. There's nothing else out there quite like it. You really do become quite fond of your locomotive over the course of the game. This is definitely your lifeblood, keeping you alive in this harsh environment. And I was really excited to see that they announced a sequel to this coming out very soon. I think it's called Far Changing Tides, which changes the game setting from land over to the water, so maybe we'll see how these oceans dried up or what happened. A really cool gameplay premise, and I'm all about that water, so I'm really looking forward to it. Definitely check out Far Lone Sails. I highly recommend it. Next up on the Switch, we've got Hoa, and this might be the most charming game I've ever played in my life, rivaling the likes of Nintendo in terms of overall cuteness and adorable factor. This game is very simple. It comes from a Vietnamese developer. Hoa is Vietnamese for flower. This is a beautifully crafted, puzzle-solving, very light adventure, really meant for focusing on taking in the beautiful, breathtaking environments and some of the most amazing piano arrangements I've ever heard in my life. It is just a gorgeous soundtrack. You get a free copy with the game, so that's definitely a plus. Hoa sees you taking control of a tiny ferry. The opening moment sees you sailing in on a small leaf boat, and then the adventure begins. And the light-hearted, whimsical nature of the game is evident immediately upon playing. There's nothing overly complex in Hoa. There's no death, and there's really no enemies that can even damage you. On paper, this might seem like the definition of where this game gets the bad rep of walking simulators, because that's basically what you do, is just walk in a direction. There's some platforming and some puzzle solving, but nothing overly taxing. Throughout this game, the storyline is revealed in different sections as you progress. The environments are nicely varied and change as you make your way throughout this world. Now, throughout the game, you encounter forest elders, and these are all bright, colorful forest creatures that all seem to remember you from a younger age. They all have a little bit of backstory they fill you in on, and they all have tasks for you to perform, mainly in collecting these butterflies. Now, once you explore the environments and collect these butterflies, you come back to them and they will give you a new ability that you use to progress on to the next level. Rinse and repeat for a good 4 or 5 levels and you make your way to the end. And like the old saying goes, it's not the destination but the journey to get there, and that's how this game can be summed up. Every moment in this game, whether it be an environment in the forest or underwater or high up in the sky, is a visual feast for the eyes. It's very captivating, almost in a childlike innocence kind of way. It definitely will take a certain kind of gamer to really appreciate this and get the most enjoyment out of it, because it is definitely a lot more simple than previous games that we've talked about, but it's definitely nonetheless enjoyable. Thought-provoking, the environments are full of charm. Overall, this is a game you can kind of just sit back on cruise control and just enjoy yourself. And it's really not until the end sequence that you're really going to be tested in terms of puzzle solving. This section really surprised me with its kind of darker tone and feel, and all of the story will eventually be explained towards the end. And the ending is very powerful. It really makes all of the events from the beginning make sense in the end. I kind of wish the later sections in the game had a little bit more longevity, because that's where it really starts picking up in terms of complexity. It makes for a powerful ending, a very heartwarming tale with a very satisfying conclusion. This is a game that I'll definitely see myself going back to and just enjoying over and over again. Hoa is a masterpiece throughout. I've got a few honorable mentions that I want to give special shout to, and I had full intentions of including these in the episode. However, it kind of got away from me. I didn't plan for this episode to go this long. I really want to try to concentrate on making smaller videos so I can get them out more frequently. Spirit of the North, you take control of a fox moving through a desolate Arctic environment. Stunning visuals, and the soundtrack is up there along with the games mentioned in this video as one of the premier soundtracks in video gaming. Grizz is highly stylized, taking place in a very bleak world that adds color as you progress and puzzle solve through the environments. A real emotional tale, absolute masterpiece. And Rime is a really big, almost Wind Waker-esque kind of adventure game that has a lot of great puzzle solving, really beautiful atmosphere, and a great soundtrack, very whimsical feel. I really want to cover these games in greater detail at some point in the future, and I really wanted to include them in this episode. However, it would have been well over an hour, which is way too long for somebody to sit down and go through. I understand that. So I'm going to try to get these out more frequently. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, Games of War is nothing without you.